677 to learn more.
When opportunity knocks, you don't want to miss the call. Hamilton Business Technologies makes communication easy and efficient using customized technology, all while putting people first. Whether you're working from the office, at home, or on the go, Hamilton Business Technologies equips your business with the right tools for smooth, professional call handling. Hamilton Business Technologies. Real people, real technology solutions. Learn more at hamiltonisbusiness.com.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait. Apply now.
Just wrapped up as Williams turns the corner, 2 more into the line, a chance for 3, Bryce Williams. Hustle down to the block, post up, and go to work now on 93.7 The Ticket. And the offensive rebound, Berke Butunjel. The post-game post-up is sponsored by Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical, and Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits. There's a CJ, same spot, same result. He is red hot. A siege in ahead half court. Eulis good if it goes, and it counts. Aaron Eulis with a half court 3 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome in. Husker Hoops postgame show. Harrison Arns going solo just for a little bit here. We should be joined by Austin Orman early, or I should say a little bit later, likely around that 10:15, 10:20 mark. But in the meantime, I'll go solo here. Nebraska basketball, they get a win in March. Not a March Madness win, but a college basketball crown win, a postseason win nonetheless. They beat Arizona State 86-78. You guys can join in 402-464-5685 for any of your thoughts, as well as Facebook, YouTube, X, Allo Channel 961. Want to put a face to the voice. So real quickly, we'll go through the box score and just give a broad picture of it. Like I said, we will be joined by Austin Norman later. He was there for the post-game press conference as well and got some comments that I'm sure he'll talk about. But leading scores for this one, Bryce Williams, as you can imagine, leads the way for Nebraska. 30 points, 8 for 16 from the floor. Pretty good day from the three-point line as well, as he goes 4 for 10 and then 10 for 13 the charity stripe. Once again, just one of the best free throw shooters in the Big Ten, Bryce Williams. And again, tonight, 10 for 13. Some other notable factors, Juwan Gary, he finishes at 18 points on a good night from him as well. He was also 8 for 16, shooting 50% from the floor. Took 2 threes, went 0 for 2, 2 free throws, made both of those as well. And then Connor Sejan, really good day from him. 17 points, 7 of 9 from the floor. He was 2 for 4 from the three-point line and shot 2 free throws, missed 1 at the stripe, though. And that would be your leading scorers for Nebraska. You would have some other guys contribute. I think Andrew Morgan, he put up 6 points. Berke Butunjel puts up 5. Sam Hoiberg has a good game. Again, not a guy that's going to take a ton of shots out there, but is efficient when he does. It's 2 for 4 from him for 7 points. Also picking up 7 rebounds. I think that's notable. And anytime you get a guard the height of Sam Hoiberg, I think he led the way going across the spot. Yeah, he actually led the way for Nebraska when it comes to rebounding with Sam Hoiberg. Arguably the shortest guy on the court for most of the night there, would lead the team in rebounding with 7 rebounds. And then Eulis, 0 for 2, 0 points in this one. And Cale Jacobson gets in the game. He gets 2 points. Pretty good game from Jacobson. He played 22 minutes. Obviously, with Raleigh Wooster being out, you were going to have to find that production somewhere else. And I thought Cale Jacobson actually did a pretty good job. Wasn't overly forcing certain issues in the game, was patient, was doing what he needed to. He had that good pass to Sam Hoiberg late in the game. That was kind of the cherry on top for expanding Nebraska's lead to 10 points. And that was just simple basketball. Cale Jacobson, he just dribbles inside, penetrates when he sees they're overcommitting on the perimeter, gets in there, turns around, finds a wide open Sam Hoiberg, and give credit for Sam Hoiberg for moving on the perimeter as opposed to just standing there and watching. And again, I think that was kind of the the big shot late in the game that was kind of starting to put the nail in the coffin against Arizona State. Really good win. I'll be curious to know how much the college basketball crown moves the needle for people's expectations for a program, but it's a good start. Like it wasn't the prettiest game, as we do have some people who hopped on the YouTube comments earlier before we went live here. And as Jason points out here, we won a postseason game. Damn, it was ugly, but it feels good. And I think that's the only way you can look at it. It wasn't the prettiest win. At times, certainly not. But I think offensively, that's a big leap of improvement for Nebraska. For an offense that struggled as much as it has, Nebraska finished the day shooting 51% from the floor. 33% from the three-point line. Again, not great, but we've seen a lot worse. 33%. It's nothing to scoff at. Pretty average number. Free throws, 16 for 22, a little lower than you would like. But again, 51% on the day from the offense is a pretty good shooting number. Anytime you're able to go over 50%, you'll take it. 33% from the three-point line, as they said, and okay from the charity stripe. Turnovers, you had 14, but Arizona State had 16, and Nebraska did a really good job scoring off of Arizona State's turnovers. That was one thing I think me and Eric Strickland harped on pretty consistently throughout the entire season, was for how bad this offense struggles at time, they really fail to make good shot attempts when they do get those fast break opportunities, or just not even look for some of those fast break opportunities. This was a game where Nebraska did a good job. They got a turnover and they were very quick up the court with it. Not dribbling it, just passing it up the court. That's always going to be faster than just trying to go ISO down the lane. And they made it look easy. It reminded me a little bit of what Nebraska basketball looked like after they got a big win versus Oregon on the road. After that Oregon win, I use that game as an example all the time because it's really where my expectations rose a decent amount for this team. In that game, it looked like they finally figured out some of that team chemistry stuff, which when you have a team full of transfers, you kept Bryce Williams, Ron Gary, Sam Hoiberg, but just about everybody else getting significant minutes was transfer players. It's going to take time for that stuff to gel. And I think in that Oregon game was the first time we saw it as a Husker fan base, where they were kind of getting comfortable with how they like to operate, how each other likes to operate on the fast breaks, where their spots are at. And you start to see a lot of that. In this game, you saw that again. You saw a team that looked comfortable playing with each other, understanding where they're likely going to be or what the offense calls for and where their strengths are at. And again, turnover wise, Nebraska had 14, Arizona State had 16, like I said, but Nebraska gets 24 points off turnovers compared to Arizona State getting just 11. So it was another good sign of this team's chemistry. They're going to have to rebuild it again come the offseason. I mean, we've talked about it before, but Andrew Morgan gone, Braxton Mia gone, Raleigh Wooster, he was going to be gone anyways. But obviously with the ankle injury, he wasn't here for this one. Sam Hoiberg's coming back, Connor Sejan's coming back, but you're losing your 1-2 punch in Juwan and Bryce, and then you're losing your bigs, which, for better or for worse, it's a room you're going to have to replace and fill out again. You'll get Rink Mass back, but again, it's just going to be a lot of new faces, and you want that team chemistry to gel quicker than later, because I think we saw that, especially when Nebraska basketball started getting some conference play and other teams had the scouting report on what Nebraska likes to do. We saw that offense had a grinding halt, but this was a good game. Again, Nebraska, you scored over 75 points, and Arizona State scored over 75 points. And I only mentioned to say that because Nebraska's record when anybody scores over 75 points has been pretty abysmal. I think they only have a couple wins when that's been the case, and one of them was South Dakota earlier in the year when they scored 100 plus points on South Dakota. And the way South Dakota plays, they're just going to keep taking shots. They're not too worried about the defense, so it makes sense. But it's just a good sign for Nebraska's offense to score above 75 points, to get into 80 for a team who's had 21 points at a half at times, for a team who's, lost to Michigan after keeping Michigan under 50 points at the end of the game. It's just good to see the signs of this offense clicking, and really good to see Connor Sejan have the day he did. He's a guy who I think unwrongfully got picked on a little bit towards the end of the season because he was having a bit of a cold spell. But if you actually look at his regular season overall numbers, it's pretty efficient. It's thing most teams would be, I think, salivating for in the portal as a guy like Connor Sejan's stats. You'd say it's a good 3-point shooter. Had that cold spell at the end of the year, and I think it kind of tainted what people originally thought of him. But this was a really good showing for him. He was huge in this game. And I think most people going into the college basketball crown, wanting to root for Nebraska, knew, okay, Bryce Williams is going to show up. Juwan Gary is going to show up. Who's going to be that third guy? Normally it's been Connor Season, but it hasn't been always been Connor Season, especially at that late spell it's kind of talking about. And I think that's where you're seeing Nebraska lose a lot of games. It's like we didn't know where that third scorer was coming from. We had games where Bryce and Juwan would combine for 50 points and the rest of the team would maybe combine for 10. It was just that bad at times. So it was good to see Connor Season kind of go back and just have a really, really strong day out there. Like I said, 7 for 9 and didn't take a ton of threes, but was highly effective when he did. And that's the part of his game I think most people wanted to see grow. And especially since, as long as he doesn't hop in the portal, he'll be back. You want to see that area of him grow because he's always going to have that 3-point shooting threat. He's done a good enough job as a 3-point shooter that even if he is in one of those quote unquote cold spells throughout a week, a couple of weeks, he's still going to have that gravitational pull towards him. I mean, people just aren't going to be willing to leave him wide open on the perimeter. They're going to have to, especially on help defense, make sure they don't get too far away from him. But in this game, when he did, and what I hope continue to see next year as well, is attack him inside the paint as well. That's an area. It's not fair to compare players to Keisei Tominaga all the time, but that's what Keisei did really well. It was especially when teams just completely sold out on trying to stop him from getting open shots from the 3-point line. He just got really good at going backdoor on people. If you don't want to give me any room out here on the perimeter, I'll find a lot of real estate right behind your back. And you saw that a lot. A team or a defender would look away. Keisei would go straight to the cup. And we had guys like Rink Mast who were very adept at finding those cutters. And Connor Season, you saw a little bit of that tonight. Even with the ball at times, if he saw people rushing to meet him out there on the perimeter, he'd get a nice little hezzy, then go downhill at the lane. And if not finish, find somebody else who's open. So I thought that was a good development in his game. And hopefully we continue to see that as the college basketball crown tournament rolls on forward. But that being said, we'll throw it to a little bit of an early break here. So that way, when we do come back, we should be joined by Austin Orman, and we can give him the floor as opposed to just 2 really short segments. We'll go all the way to the top of the hour, so don't go anywhere. Harrison Arns on the 1s and 2s back at the Ticket Studio. We will be joined by Austin Orman, who's down there at the College Basketball Crown in Vegas watching the Huskers. So be sure to stick around. We'll have comments from him coming up next on the post-game post-up.
Wrestling fans, it's time to elevate your game, just like Stevens & Smith Construction does for your concrete needs. As your full-service concrete contractor, we deliver solid results every time. From singles to doubles, fighting for inside position to scrambling reversals, we know how to pin down quality and slam expectations. Stevens & Smith Construction, a proud sponsor of Takedown Tuesdays on 93.7 The Ticket, where Husker wrestlers bring you all the action. Don't stall, Stevens & Smith Construction is here to help you build a concrete foundation for the win. Check us out at www.stevensandsmith.com because stalling is a penalty and winning is the only option.
Get ready for spring by joining an evidence-based program to improve your health and well-being. These programs use proven strategies to help you make lasting changes, whether it's boosting nutrition, increasing activity, managing stress, or enhancing wellness. Invest in yourself today and feel your best this spring and beyond. Paid for by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de the Alzheimer's Association y the Ad Council.
Electrical Enterprises in Roca reminds you the men and women of our military dedicate themselves to serving our country. Their commitment and courage keep our country safe and strong. Let's honor those who have lost their lives in the line of duty and salute those who serve today. This from Electrical Enterprises in Roca. For all your residential and commercial electrical construction needs, call 402-438-5822. They're on the air reminding everyone that we live in the land of the free thanks to the brave.
I used to smoke. I thought of cigarettes as my best friend. They were always there for me when I needed a break.
I also thought cigarettes were my best friend, and then they gave me peripheral artery disease.
I smoked and had a stroke. Actually, multiple strokes.
I smoked and have heart disease.
Here's my tip. If cigarettes are your friend, you need a better friend.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Get rid of pesky critters once and for all with Bats to Rats. Their expert team is here to help you reclaim your home. No more sleepless nights caused by crawling critters or flapping wings. Bats to Rats ensures a safe environment for every family member. Check the website at batstorats.com for amazing offers. And if you mention this ad, you'll receive $10 off your initial inspection cost. Call Bats to Rats today at 402-781-8691. That's 402-781-8691. Bats to Rats.
Things that impair you come in many different shapes and sizes. Some are the shape of beer and liquor bottles. Others look like cigarettes but aren't cigarettes at all. These are the things we know impair us, the things our parents warned us about. What we're not always aware of is our new prescription or the over-the-counter medicine we picked up just for allergies or a bad cold. See, it doesn't just matter how much of a substance you take. If you are impaired, driving is deceptively dangerous. Don't drive impaired. Paid for by the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
Bagels & Joe is the perfect place for breakfast or lunch in March. Try a double chocolate muffin with a leprechaun latte made with dark chocolate, peppermint, and Irish cream. For lunch, try the salmon panini with provolone, sesame oil, and tomatoes on a ciabatta roll with bagel chips. Perfect for Lent. 4 locations in Lincoln and 1 in Seward. Bagels & Joe.
All right, well, welcome back into the Husker Hoops postgame show. I believe I was just joined by Austin Orman, but I think he lagged out in the nick of time right before we open up segment number 2. But no worries. We'll wait for his Wi-Fi to buffer back as he's down there. I think he's back to the hotel room. Hopefully the Wi-Fi down there is not too shoddy, so we can join back by Austin Orman. But in the meantime, I'll carry you through here as we're going all the way up to that 11 o'clock hour. And let's get to some of the comments here. As again, Nebraska basketball wins it. I mean, you could argue first postseason win, really. That's counting. Well, I guess Strickland back in the day did go win the NIT. So there has been some postseason wins, but the first postseason win in the college basketball crown at the very least. And let's go ahead and try it now, as I do see a Austin Orman that is not frozen. Austin Orman.
Thanks for being here, Harrison. Thanks for sticking it out with us. Big thanks to Lincoln Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits and Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical for their help as well. I get back to the hotel, and apparently the Wi-Fi that was so good all day decides that now is the time it wants to act up. So I'm on my hotspot right now. If we go in and out, that is why I apologize. I'll try to get the stabler Wi-Fi connection back. But Harrison, this is a game that I wasn't sure what to expect from Nebraska, and yet as soon as I get to the game, starting to watch it unfold, it feels like every other Nebraska game that we watched for the better part of a month. Some good moments, a lot of Bryce Williams keeping Nebraska afloat, and then just a lot of sloppy basketball for a while. Really, the first 25 minutes or so, Arizona State ends up taking, I believe, an 8-point lead at 38-30 into the halftime break on the heels of a 14-4 run, right? It wasn't just one thing. It was Arizona State's pretty hot shooting from 3. It was Arizona State getting downhill and getting to the free throw line early on that really helped them out. And it was Nebraska's just kind of casual nature with the ball. If Nebraska created an advantage, they would give it away. The ball would slip through their fingertips and they'd make an errant pass. Or Nebraska wouldn't create an advantage, and then it would be down to Bryce Williams to play hero ball, or Nebraska would force up a contested 2. I was really worried that Nebraska there, Harrison, was going to die the same way they lived at the end of the season. That was with the lack of ball movement, with some defense that didn't look entirely interested, not making a lot of plays on the ball. But Nebraska turned it around, and we can get into some of the reasons for that. And we've seen this from Nebraska, right? Start slow, punch back in the middle, and then if the punch in the middle of the game is strong enough, Nebraska's going to hold on to win. They iced it with some free throws down the stretch. But sometimes, Nebraska's punch was just enough to get back even and nothing more. Today, Nebraska's punch back from down 11 to where Nebraska's largest lead was 12. That is a 23-point swing in this game. Nebraska, its largest deficit was at 43-32 with about 18 and a half minutes to go in the game, and they wouldn't extend it to 12 till they hit some free throws late. They got it to 12 with about 80 seconds left in the game. But still, that is a 23-point swing in 17 minutes of game action. That's not necessarily easy to do. It's frustrating to some degree that this team is who it's always been, the same nature of the team, the players are the same, and the 3 weeks off didn't fix that, which, just as a quick aside, Fred Hoiberg said, was asked about, how much of the first 25 minutes was you guys knocking off the rust. And Fred Hoiberg said, well, we can't attribute it to that because it's not like we had any extra time off compared to anyone else. Well, hate to tell you, Coach Hoiberg, you kind of did, because you didn't qualify for the Big Ten tournament. Arizona State did. Now, Arizona State went one and done, and the Huskers ultimately dig deep. They find a lineup that works that I'm sure we'll talk about here, that brings them back from down 11 to up 12, and they end Arizona State's season on a 6-game losing streak. Nebraska snaps a 5-game losing streak of its own, its first postseason win outside of a conference tournament since 2019.
Yeah, I didn't know what the year was. That hurts even more knowing it. I put that prompt. I was like, I wonder what the last postseason win was for Nebraska. Obviously not in the March Madness, but any postseason play. Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
I tweeted out as a little bit of a callback for Husker fan. Today's game was the Alonzo Verge Bowl. Nebraska got him as a transfer in from Arizona State. It was Nebraska's first postseason win since, drumroll please, the Barry Collier Bowl in that 2019 NIT when Nebraska gets a 4 seed and hosts Butler in the first round at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Nebraska had a couple wins in the Big Ten tournament since then, but nothing on the national stage in a national postseason tournament. So maybe just took an old friends connection to get Nebraska back on the board. Either way, 6 years into Fred Hoiberg's tenure, it's kind of crazy that we're saying this is the first postseason win for him at Nebraska. That's certainly not what he was hired to do. But, better late than never and better ugly than a loss.
Yeah, and he's the first coach to do it since 2000. So it's not like the marks before were, and this is where Nebraska basketball is in such a weird spot. And I know you've talked about it before, but I think, what are the expectations for Nebraska basketball? Are they made clear with the athletic department, or are we just kind of okay with being a Northwestern, a team that's going to be good sometimes and then have to recycle and redevelop and then be good and then just kind of go back and recycle? I'm just curious to see how this team continues to grow. I think this was a good showing for them. It did look very much the same. I'll say this much. I didn't learn anything new about the team. Connor Sejan played good today. Typically, the result's been when Juwan, Bryce, and Connor play good, we win games and we score over 75 points. Today, that's stayed true as well. They gave up over 75 points, though, so I know it's one of Strick's favorite stats. We can add that to the collection. Arizona State scores 78. They break the 75 margin, and I can't remember exactly what Nebraska's record is, but they only got a couple wins when the other team scores over 75 points. So they did enough offensively today. And I was saying this before, we can't say it was, not the prettiest looking game, but Nebraska did walk out of the gym shooting 51% on the day.
Well, that's the thing. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because you're right. At the end of the day, yes, Nebraska ends up shooting 31 of 61, but that was bolstered by 20 of 31 shooting in the second half. Nebraska ends up at 33% from three. They were 8 of 24. They made 4 in both halves, so it was relatively even there. But Harrison, this 86 points is the most points Nebraska has scored in regulation since February the 5th. When Nebraska went up to Washington and they were down big at the end of the first half. Washington was putting on that shooting barrage that left you and I with our head in our hands more often than not in the conference room there. And then Nebraska roared back in the second half. That's pretty much exactly what they did today against a team that's, I would say, a little bit better. I would take Great Osibor from Washington over most players on these rosters right now. But Arizona State was, I think, a little bit better than Washington as a whole. I mean, Jihad was really good for them pretty much all night long. But when it comes to, how the game looks, right? I mean, Nebraska still ends up with 14 turnovers. That's not going to get it done. Luckily for Nebraska, Arizona State turned it over 16 times. So you do technically win the turnover battle, but there's not exactly a lot to hang your hat on there. Nebraska does get one more offensive rebound.
Just for the turnover battle, I will say though, Nebraska they've been getting better at it. We used the Oregon game example, but at least they were effective with those turnovers and fast breaks. Like Nebraska was able actually to do something, and as opposed to Arizona State, you can make an argument that's where they lost the game. They were doing diddly squat with a lot of those turnovers that could have swung the game for them.
Yeah, 18 points off turnovers for Nebraska just in the second half. Let me pull it up for the game here. So for the game, Nebraska ends up with 24 points off of those 16 Arizona State turnovers, whereas Arizona State gets 11 off of Nebraska's 14 turnovers. And it's generally, I don't have any, experts to back me up on this, so allow me to pretend to play the role of an expert here on postgame. If you're getting 1 point per turnover, that's kind of what I view as the break-even mark. If you do anything more than that, it probably means that you're hitting some transition threes or you're really getting downhill in transition with the numbers advantage off of live ball turnovers. And Fred Hoiberg has said this all year, and it ended up being what sparked Nebraska here. Nebraska is just not good when they have to take the ball out of the net. Little bit of a stop and start first half as both these teams end up, trying to knock off some rust. Officiating toward the end of the half made it a little bit choppy. Not saying it was wrong, not saying it was bad all the time. Both coaches certainly had their complaints with it, but at the end of the first half was just not played in the way Nebraska needs games to be played to be successful. And it took until Fred Hoiberg found that lineup at like the U16 timeout about a little after that to spark Nebraska. How did it get sparked? Nebraska got stops. They rebounded. They could run offense in the flow and the rhythm of the game. And, Juwan Gary had 4 quick points on a stop and a run out, and then a give and go off a steal in transition. So it still boggles my mind that Nebraska doesn't make more of a concerted effort to get out and go in transition. And maybe part of that is Fred Hoiberg, wants more control over the offense, wants his guys to slow down and maximize possessions. But, that's admirable if you're going to make it work in the half court. But Nebraska just doesn't, which is where I have to piggyback off of what Strick always says. And that's Nebraska needs to look for those moments to run situationally. When they have an opportunity with numbers, or even if it's even numbers 4-on-4, 3-on-3, if Nebraska has someone downhill with a head of steam and they can create an advantage, they need to look to do that. Because once Nebraska got a couple of those stops, got off and running, got those easy buckets, that's kind of where that game started to turn. I didn't think Nebraska played spectacularly. I don't think Arizona State gave up. But at the end of the game, those final 15 minutes, yeah, Nebraska did show more resolve than Arizona State did. And credit Nebraska for finding a way to make sure its season extends at least through Wednesday.
Yeah, and good job finding the composure. I will say, they almost pissed it away there for a little bit, just on trying to get it out of bounds a few times. But, credit to them, they eventually kind of calmed down with it. And I think, I don't know what that is with Nebraska, but they have a lot of those moments where in close games, when the other team's pressing, it's almost like it takes a couple turnovers for them to get comfortable with it and figure out how to break it down.
But it's the same thing. Same thing with the game in general, right? Nebraska doesn't just handle the start of games well. Nebraska doesn't handle the start of pressure well, and that comes from a variety of reasons. I did ask Fred Hoiberg about, hey, that small lineup, or at least a version of a small lineup that sparked you guys. Why do you guys like that so much? In the second half instead of starting with it. He did a masterful job of deflecting the question I asked and the question that I intended to ask. I have been on this train for a long time. Nebraska can play faster. Nebraska can play freer when it has, one guy that's 6'9" or above on the court. When Nebraska tries to start Berkay Boyutengel at the 4 alongside either Morgan or Braxton Mia, who it was good to see make his return to game action today. Nebraska just operates, flows so much better with one big. And there were times today where Cale Jacobson was the one quote-unquote big guy, where Bryce and Juwan were the tallest guys on the court for Nebraska. It helps that Arizona State starting center Sean Phillips fouled out. Absolutely, they weren't exactly a huge team to begin with freshman stud Jaden Quaintance out for the game as well. But when you look at Nebraska struggling to start games, I think it's because the offensive flow is off and they're not as athletic on defense, right? They want to be big so they can rebound and clog the paint, but that's not how this team plays best. And we have, not just a couple games or a couple weeks of sample size, we have months of sample size that shows Nebraska's spark comes from playing small. I think that would help with the ball handling, except that Nebraska doesn't have a lot of guys who are confident and comfortable with the ball in their hands against pressure, right? Bryce Williams can bring the ball up, doesn't have the tightest handle. He's not a natural point guard. He's still learning it. Sam Hoiberg has the turnover bug, right? That's a guy you would like to depend on to snake out of some traps or speed around him. Aaron Eulis hasn't offered much ball handling. Juwan Gary has improved as a free throw shooter, but isn't exactly a ball handler. That's where, if Nebraska were able to trust Berke Boyukdengel to bring the ball up the court like they did Rink Mass last year, as long as Nebraska could make the first pass inbounds and then make the pass back to the inbounder, that's where Rink Mass was so effective last year, right? Because he could pass over guards, or if it was man-to-man pressure instead of a run and jump sort of trap like we saw from Arizona State, you just have Rink Mass walk the ball up the floor. Kill some time, initiate your offense with your playmaking hub anyways. So I think that the lack of I don't want to say true point guard, right? Because I haven't been on that train all year, right? Nebraska's had some quote-unquote true point guards on the roster, and it hasn't necessarily helped. Most of the time, it's a mindset. That's why you press when you play youth league, because you're more aggressive, because you can spook the other kids into throwing the ball away and being soft with it. Nebraska's dudes, despite not, any one of them being what any of us would consider a true point guard or even a lead guard, you're a college basketball player, right? You know how to dribble. You know how to pass. You've been fighting a press break since you were in 4th grade. Slow down mentally, chill out, and anyone, just want the ball. Just jump back to the ball, go through it. You're probably going to get a foul called. It would be fine. And then if Nebraska could trust Berke Boyukdengel to close late in games, I think that would help him out tremendously as well.
Yeah, and real quick here before we throw it to our final break here, you mentioned that Berke Boyukdengel, I didn't get to see the entire first half. Was he in foul trouble early on? Was that why he didn't play a whole lot?
Berke was just kind of Berke-ing it out there. He ended up with 5 points on 6 shots in the first half, did have 5 rebounds, just 1 personal foul and 1 turnover in 14 minutes in the first half. So, I mean, he played the majority of the minutes. Nebraska just didn't get to that lineup that worked until late.
Okay. Either way, well, I'm glad they found the lineup that ends up working. I want to ask, what do you think about Cale Jacobson? From what I saw in the second half, he wasn't asked to do a lot, but I mean, he looked composed enough, and he was making, I think he set up that good pass to Sam Hoiberg. That was a really big 3 at the moment that kind of helped seal Nebraska's lead. But, I thought he did. How many minutes did Cale Jacobson get out there for?
Cale Jacobson ended up on the game playing for 22 minutes, but I think it was 15 or 16 in the second half. Yeah, it ended up being 16 second half minutes. He actually leads Nebraska in assists with 5 of them. And Fred Hoiberg gave Cale Jacobson a lot of props, a lot of kudos post game. I mean, this is the quote unquote Cale Jacobson game, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, plain and simple, it was. When he entered the game really for good there in the second half, you nailed it. He was that steadying presence. He didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't do anything overly flashy. I think he could have even had another assist had Gary not fumbled the ball out of bounds off a baseline play. But this is where, Harrison, numbers guys like me sometimes struggle, because there is nothing in the data, in the numbers, in what Cale Jacobson shows you that says he should have been that effective. But today, it worked. Cale Jacobson's role is a connective piece. The fact that he was able to competently dribble the ball across half court and get Nebraska into sets, that he would be in the right place at the right time. It's one of those, qualitative sort of advantages that took over for Nebraska. It shifted Bryce Williams off the ball. It shifted Juwan Gary off the ball down the positional spectrum on offense, where he has more advantages in creating and getting downhill. It shouldn't have worked the way it did defensively, but Cale Jacobson did some really good work on Jihad as well. Fred Hoiberg gave him credit for sticking to the scouting report. So whether Nebraska, wins the college basketball crown and gets all the NIL money, or Nebraska is done on Wednesday, we will always and forever have the Cale Jacobson game. And that's a game that so many programs in the Big Ten have, right? They bring these guys from in-state that just know how to do their job, that just make enough winning plays. Can you build a roster out of Cale Jacobson? Out of his mindset? Yeah. Out of guys that look like him? Probably not. Every team needs one or two of them. Nebraska seems like they found theirs in Sam Hoiberg and Cale Jacobson. And in some ways, that's the mark of a healthy program, developing these guys from out of nowhere that every other fan base in the league says, oh my gosh, they found another one. Why is this guy killing us? He shouldn't be this good. Because you can't point to one discernible skill for either Sam Hoiberg or Cale Jacobson, if we're being completely honest. They're just good, solid basketball players, know how to get the job done and make their teammates' lives easier. So huge shout out to Cale Jacobson for his 22 minutes, and Fred Hoiberg called him the player of the game performance tonight.
Yeah, I think it's fitting. He, to your point, he is one of those interesting guys where you'd almost need to feel good about it, a 50-game sample, and just be like, all right, what's the offensive team rating when you're on the court compared to when you're off the court? He's not going to have the points. He might have the assist based on what that game was. But no. And then speaking of the other guy, Sam Hoiberg, leading rebounder for the Huskers tonight. Was
How about that?
Sam Hoiberg, probably shortest guy on the court, ends up being a leading rebounder.
I can't say for sure that Sam's the smallest guy on the court, but it would not shock me if he was. So Cale Jacobson's season-long numbers are a little skewed, and I also don't love using offensive rating and defensive rating for individuals just because they're team metric. But Cale Jacobson early in the year got thrown into a lot of garbage time minutes and a lot of just kind of defensive sort of possessions. But there's just something about having those good, solid, connective pieces who are going to make the right play, who don't need to steal the show. And yeah, I mean, Sam Hoiberg ending up as the leading rebounder on game for Nebraska is absolutely incredible. In fact, tied leading rebounder in the game with 7 of them. He had a couple really big defensive plays, a couple of strips for guys that are driving down the lane, a couple good job of showing chest, not hands. And then I didn't say it on Twitter. I didn't want to be that guy in case things came crumbling down. But the vibe in the arena, such as it was, it felt like that three that he hit off a little bit of movement. That felt like the dagger for the Huskers.
Yeah, and that was when I was really watching it, from that point on. I was like, okay, we this feels like we got to pull this one out here. If we find a way to lose this one, that's just a bad omen for maybe more years to come. But they found a way to do it, and that's a great play to mention because that was a Cale Jacobson assist to Sam Hoiberg for that momentum shifting play, if you will. We'll go ahead and throw it to our last break here. Don't go anywhere. Austin Norman, Harrison Arns, Husker Hoops postgame show as they get a win in the college basketball crown over Arizona State with the final score 86-78. Don't go anywhere. We got one more segment on the other side.
Perch Merch is your one-stop shop for all your printing and promotional needs in Lincoln, Nebraska. They specialize in screen printing, embroidery, vehicle wraps, window wraps, print collateral, promotional products, and signage. At Perch Merch, they are committed to delivering high-quality products and exceptional customer service. Their experienced team of designers and printing professionals will work with you every step of the way to ensure that your vision is realized. Call for a quote today at 402-217-5212 or go to perch-merch.com.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
If you're a veteran, our nation has created a wide range of benefits to thank you for your service. But it can be difficult to navigate the process of determining eligibility, filing claims, appealing decisions, and securing the benefits you've earned. Speak to your County Veteran Service Officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. These services are 100% free. So visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Electrical Enterprises in Roca reminds you, the men and women of our military dedicate themselves to serving our country. Their commitment and courage keep our country safe and strong. Let's honor those who have lost their lives in the line of duty and salute those who serve today. This from Electrical Enterprises in Roca. For all your residential and commercial electrical construction needs, call 402-438-5822. They're on the air reminding everyone that we live in the land of the free thanks to the brave.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
There's no better way to spark a child's imagination than to get lost in the adventure of a good book. I'm Jenny Benson, president of NSEA. Working together, parents and teachers can help every child succeed. You can help by reading to your child and let your child read to you. Encourage reading in your home and make it a priority. Make reading fun and a time that you and your child look forward to spending together.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and the station.
Ticket listeners know a dream team when they see one. At Applied Connective, we've been in the game for 20 years and have developed a team of world-class leaders in all things IT. From cybersecurity and Microsoft products to physical security, audio-video, infrastructure, business phone systems, and anything in between, we'll help you leverage technology to become your most secure, efficient, and profitable. Head to our website to check out real reviews and testimonials and sign up for a free tech consultation. We can show you where you might be vulnerable, inefficient, or overspending. It's a game changer, and it's totally free. Claim yours right now at appliedconnective.com.
If you want to make new floor shopping easier, come to Oak Street Carpet. Hi, I'm Steve Carper. Our flooring professionals can help you choose the best flooring for you, your family, and your budget. We eliminate the confusion. Even better, you'll be enjoying your new flooring much sooner. No 6 or 8 week waits. We'll install right away and save you money on installation. Floor shopping made easy every day at Oak Street Carpet. Oak Street Carpet. 1732 Oak Street. Family owned and operated. Always the best value.
Spring is here. It's time to get back outside and into proper shoes this year. Brown's Shoe Fit is the place to buy this spring with their sale on athletic shoes. Get $15 off any regular priced athletic shoes with respected brands like Hoka, Brooks, New Balance, and On Running. And don't forget, Brown's carries a large arrangement of sizes and widths to fit your feet properly. Start your spring off right at Brown's Shoe Fit, just south of 66th and Q in Lincoln.
Welcome back in Husker Hoops postgame show as they win in the first round of the college basketball crown over Arizona State, 86-78. Joined by Austin Norman as always. You guys can always join in. Last segment here, 402-464-5685. That is the Starter Heyman text line. You can put a face to the voice via any of these streams. That being said, Austin Norman, the floor is yours. We got about 10 minutes left here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to get to from this one. I think the first shout out I'll give is to Bryce Williams. I mean, 30 points on 16 shots. He was 4-10 from 3, 10-13 at the free throw line, an uncharacteristic off night for Bryce Williams, if you will. He said before the team left for Vegas that, you know, he wanted another opportunity to put this uniform on, and Bryce went out there and he played like it, right? I wasn't sure if that was just Bryce Williams as an upperclassman saying the right thing to say the right thing, or if he actually meant it. But, you know, Bryce Williams was in the zone. Big thanks to Arizona State for that. There were a few times in the first handful of minutes where the Sun Devils just stopped guarding Bryce Williams. They just gave him a walk-in three. Didn't care to recover out after a switch, didn't care to fight over a screen. That got Bryce Williams going early. He was the closer late. It felt like it took a while for Juwan Gary to make an impact. I mean, he ends up with 18 points on the game. He had 6 in the first half on 3 of 7, 2 rebounds for him as well in the first half. I wasn't as impressed with Juwan Gary, but at the end of the day, the numbers are what they are. He ended up doing his job for Nebraska. And I know you mentioned it, but there might not be a bigger X factor left in the country, whether you're talking about the NCAA tournament on the men's or women's side, or the hallowed college basketball crown that Nebraska is fighting for, than Connor Essegian, right? I mean, he was 7 for 7 in the second half, and really he scored his 17 points over a stretch of like 7 or 8 minutes. He hit a couple threes that got him going, hit a back cut. Sam Hoiberg got that steal that ended up leading to the Essegian finger roll, hit some free throws as well. The challenge for Connor Essegian moving forward will be, how can he make that happen in conference play? Connor Essegian is just a gem for Nebraska to have in non-conference play, for teams that don't know Nebraska's actions, for teams that don't top lock him, that don't face guard him, that aren't physical with him. teams like that, Connor Essegian's going to get going against. And in these non-conference games, like he was in Hawaii, like he was against, I think it was South Dakota, Connor Essegian can really get going. The problem is when you get into Big Ten play, teams are familiar with you. Nebraska broke out some wrinkles for Connor Essegian, but he just wasn't hitting, right? I mean, when he was good, Nebraska was good. When he was bad, Nebraska was bad. So this offseason is going to be big for Nebraska to figure out how to properly utilize Connor Essegian. Is he a starter next year? I don't want to go that far saying yes or no because we have no idea what the roster is going to look like as Nebraska replaces 7 seniors. But Connor Essegian is an upperclassman. That's a guy that by now should be dependable, should be pretty consistent. And, the numbers at the end of the regular season for Connor Essegian, pretty darn good. The problem was it came every other night. So it's great that you can have an X factor like him who can get you going, who can get you back in a game. His threes, his layups were some huge plays to swing things back in the Huskers' favor. But now you need that from him night in and night out, right? Sometimes, yes, your impact can be off the ball for gravity and for spacing, but that's not what Nebraska needs right now. Nebraska needs an actual impact player who's putting the ball, over the top of the rim and through the bottom of the net. Connor Essegian can do that. We've seen that at so many different points in time. And now for Wednesday, as we start looking ahead, which big man is going to show up for Nebraska? Will one of them, play even half decently? Nebraska, I don't know if I tell you this, I shouldn't take a basketball expert to determine this. If Jawan Gary is guarding the 5 and Cale Jacobson is playing the 5 for you at times, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't think that's going to be successful for Nebraska long-term. In doses like tonight, absolutely. I love it. It was so fun to watch the Cale Jacobson experience in person. Good for that young man. He has absolutely earned it. But you're telling me Andrew Morgan can't do more than 3 of 6 and 4 rebounds against a small team? Braxton Mia, maybe he's a little bit rusty, but he only played 5 minutes, had 2 turnovers in those 5 minutes. And Berkey Boyuktengel, I still don't know what the staff thinks he is. If he's a 5, he should be the starting 5. If he's a 4, Nebraska's in trouble, right? Unless you're playing some very specific matchups, kind of like Michigan. And I know that's the game that he went, essentially 0 for. We did go 0 for. He didn't make a shot in his first game back from injury. But this is the point of the year where you wish Nebraska had some clarity on what these guys were going to be moving forward, or at least what the vision was. I think there's clarity for what Connor Essegian is and what the next step for him is, if there's going to be a next step. But Nebraska is going to need some better minutes out of the post. I'm not going to say more production. I don't think Nebraska needs a back to the basket wizard or genius, but I think that Nebraska does need some better minutes, right? Cut down on the turnovers, cut down on the missed layups, grab a few more rebounds. None of Nebraska's bigs were effective tonight, and that can't continue if Nebraska wants to extend its stay in the college basketball crown beyond Wednesday.
Yeah, in the Big Ten ever going forward. I mean, it's the lack of post play this year has been a little bit surprising. I think we're a little bit spoiled by Derek Walker and Rink Mass kind of being back to back, even though Rink Mass different version of it, surely, and he could play a few other positions. Yeah, I mean, it's as fun as the Cale Jacobson story is. Like, that's not going to work, through the rest of this tournament. I can't tell you what it is with why guys like Andrew Morgan and Braxton Mia have really struggled so many times throughout the year. It's, me and DeMornay at times we'll talk about it, maybe a little bit too much. But it's like we're not asking, to your point, for a nightly double-double. It's like, can you get 8 points and 6 rebounds? Like, seriously, that's and play good defense. Like, that's a win. It's not even asking for 10 points or 10 rebounds. It's like, just do enough to be a notable starter on there. And again, it's like, I hope if you're Mia, if you're Andrew Morgan, you're looking at Sam Hoiberg as the leading rebounder. I mean, like, okay, he's probably working harder than I am on the glass. And there's just been too many games where I look at the rebound total. It's one thing to have a bad night offensively. It's another thing when the rebounding total is just consistently underwhelming. And that's the thing that's probably pissed me off about that group this year is I can expect some struggling offenses. I can expect bad nights. I can even expect, missing 6 free throws in a row at a home opener in a very crucial game. But you got to do something on the court to provide that spark. And that's where, again, you tip your cap to Cale Jacobson. Is he used to playing that spot? Absolutely not. But he did what he needed to. He found a way to make an impact on the game, and it doesn't even have to be stats. Sometimes it's just making smart plays, sealing guys out of the way to clear room for Bryce Williams. And it's funny that, final point here, then I'll give you the floor for how you want to wrap things up here. We are so spoiled with Bryce Williams. The fact that he scored 30 points, played an awesome game, and it really didn't come up until 45 minutes into this postgame show. We're just spoiled by how good that guy is night in, night out. That I saw 30 points, and I'm like, oh, that's okay. That's about right. Bryce Williams, 30. But you're right. Another unreal night from Bryce Williams, and he just looks more comfortable than ever out there playing.
He really does, which is good to see. And I think part of the reason it felt like a quote unquote quiet 30 points was because there was some of that stat padding at the end. In the first half, Bryce Williams has 13 points on 9 shots, only 1 rebound. But when you think about a Bryce Williams game, you think about it with him hitting a big shot or a couple big shots to will Nebraska back into it. And that wasn't Bryce's role tonight. Right, Bryce's role was to be Bryce Williams, to be the decoy, to make the next right play, to let Connor Essegian have his shine, to play solid positional defense and help Juwan Gary get going in transition. So yeah, I mean, I even tweeted it. It felt like at the beginning of the game, Nebraska was going to need Bryce to go for 40 if they wanted a chance to stick around. He ends up going for 30. You look up, you're like, oh, I mean, I guess Bryce Williams did end up with 17 points in the second half. It just didn't feel like it because he did his work early. Then he did his work in the little kind of nitty gritty. Yeah, let's just clean up, close up shop, get out of here sort of way. My last thing here really quick will just be on the post and that mindset you mentioned. Nebraska has not done a good job of rewarding its posts all year, which I think makes it harder for them to buy into that mindset. They ask Andrew Morgan to create a lot of his own offense, which he's okay at the Summit League level. He's good at it at the Summit League level where he came from, not consistently a Big Ten level creating, scoring big. Still struggles to finish, doesn't have the deepest back. Braxton Mia just hasn't gotten the ball, let alone got the ball in good positions consistently where he can be most effective. In Bearcade Boyktangel, again, I don't know how much of it's on him, how much of it's on the coaching staff. No one knows what they're doing with each other right now. At least it doesn't manifest on the court. So I completely agree with you that these guys are Division I college basketball players, that regardless of what their point totals look like, they got to play their role. They got to be big bodies. They got to go 100% effort, to be stars in their role, whether or not that means, 10 points or 2 points. But there's a very kind of human nature sort of element there where no matter, how happy you say you are doing some of that grunt work, not getting the accolades, not getting the points, I mean, at the end of the day, you're a basketball player. You want to see your name up there in the paper. You want to see a crooked number by the scoring column. So while it would be ideal for us to look at Nebraska posts and say, no matter what those guys' numbers are, they're doing their job. They're playing hard. They're busting their butt. They're doing the dirty work. At some point, Nebraska does need to reward them to make that a little bit easier for them to want to buy into what their role is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a good point to wrap up on is there's a few lobs that I'll see at the corner of my eye where I'm like, I'm gritting my teeth for Braxton Mia. I'm like, that was easy 2 points. 30 seconds, Austin Norman, real quick. How was the crowd before I let you out of here?
I don't think crowd is the right descriptor. for what number of people there were, it was mostly Husker fans. They got energized when it was time to get energized. I'm curious to see if it ticks up for Wednesday night.
Absolutely. And we'll be talking about that one again for sure. Appreciate you guys listening. This has been the Husker Hoops postgame show as Nebraska wins over Arizona State 86-78. Shout out to Austin Norman. I'm Harrison Arns. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow, 6 a.m.
Get rid of pesky critters once and for all with Bats to Rats. Their expert team is here to help you